Coaching in higher education comes with its own rhythms, pressures, and complexities. And when ADHD is part of the picture, those dynamics become even more nuanced. Today's episode explores what it truly means to coach higher education professionals and students with ADHD. We will move beyond stereotypes to understand how attention, executive functioning, motivation, and regulation show up in academic and institutional environments, and look at how coaches can adapt their presence, tools, and expectations to better support ADHD clients while also honoring neurodiversity, navigating campus culture, and helping clients leverage their strengths to thrive in higher education leadership and learning contexts. Hello, I'm Tim Jansa, a leadership and organizational development coach and your host for Coaching in Higher Education, the go-to podcast for coaching professionals and those interested in coaching at colleges and universities. My guest today is Juli Shulem, a productivity coach and organizational psychologist. Her work focuses on reducing overwhelm and frustration while improving efficiency, decision-making, and sustainable performance, particularly for individuals navigating executive functioning challenges, including ADHD. Welcome to the podcast, Juli, and thank you for taking time for this really important conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am absolutely thrilled to be here.
So, Juli, I recently had the pleasure and, to be honest, the challenge of working with no less than 3 academic clients back to back who told me from the outset that they were struggling with ADHD. So for me, this conversation is super timely. How did you move from business consulting and professional organizing into more ADHD-focused coaching, particularly with college students and academics? And what was that turning point that made you realize that ADHD would be your primary specialization?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much for asking it. So when I was a business consultant, I had segued into coaching. So I was starting to coach a bit. And in the course of 1 year, quite a long time ago, every single one of my clients at the time, and I was working with primarily entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, and every one of them said, oh, by the way, I have ADD. Now, that was before the DSM-5, so that was when it was ADD and not ADHD, which it is now. And they were all presenting with very similar issues. And I realized that started explaining why I was having to come up with some more different, some different unique systems for the way that their brains were operating. And I love the fact that this was something that I could have amazing impact with. And these people were so grateful to finally have some solutions to the issues that they were struggling with. So I was helping all of these business people and adults, and invariably over time, many of them would say, you did such a great job helping me. So I have this student, I have a college student who's struggling with the same things. And their student often was getting a diagnosis, and then they realized, oh, that's me. So this, definitely is hereditary. So we know that. So this was not a huge stretch. So I ended up working with a lot of college students, and I got to working with a lot that were in the area I was living at the time. And the Department of Disabled Services for students there got wind of my work, and they started noticing that I was having a really high success rate, and the students were really, really not only liking me, but having amazing success, like really pivotal. And they ended up putting me on their referral list. And so that was my life for many, many years, is working with undergrads as well as postdoc and PhD students.
Well, congratulations, Juli. You said you noticed you could have an amazing impact, and from everything that I've heard and seen, you certainly have. So, kudos to you for doing this. You said that those early clients, and of course, continuing with the work that you're doing, presented with similar issues. That's how you put it. For a coach or a staff member who's not a a clinical professional who's trained in this kind of work, what are some of the telltale signs that they may be struggling with undiagnosed or undermanaged ADHD?
So that's a great question. And a lot of academics, a lot of professors, for example, may start noticing certain issues. And a coach who's working with someone, there are many times I am working with someone who they say, yeah, oh, I'm having a really hard time organizing and I get distracted easily. I'm not really good at getting things done. My time management's really off and they're missing deadlines. So they'll start sharing all of these experiences they're having. And, to my mind, I'm like, okay, check, check, check. These are all the classic issues of executive functioning challenges. So I always am looking for, or when I'm talking to a professor, sometimes, I'll have individuals who, or I should say also not just professors, but individuals in corporate environments. And they say, I've got someone who's I'm working with and I've noticed these things. Well, the things that you might see are missed assignments consistently. But this person is very participatory in class. They might be, knocking it out of the park. You can tell they know that they've got the material. They're smart, but they never turn anything in. They might forget to take a test. I had a student who literally forgot to take the test, like didn't have it on the calendar. So they're generally, not great at getting things organized in terms of when they're supposed to be where. So, and these are all the things that I work with them on. I've had students where they, oh my gosh, I had one, he had forgotten he had a report to do on a book the night before. He hadn't even read the book, but he made it happen. Got an A. Don't understand. But, they knocked it out of the park. But they also may seem maybe a little depressed or unhappy, frustrated. They're generally really frustrated with themselves because they know they can do these things, but they just can't get it done. And that's really annoying for them. And they're very frustrated. They might be tired a lot and maybe late to class, missing classes, because oftentimes they also have sleep issues. So there are a variety of things, but for the most part, the areas that you want to be looking for are these things where they're just not keeping up with the rest of the class.
So what you're describing, some of it is just, let's say, behavioral, but there's a lot of psychology, of course, that goes into it. And what this brings up is naturally the line between coaching and therapy. That's one thing that we always have to watch out for, the line between coaching and consulting, and then also coaching and therapy, that we, as trained coaches, unless we have, special certifications or additional training like you have now had, that we should not cross. So I'm wondering, when you work with a client who presents with some of these struggles, how can you, and you suspect that they might be having an ADHD issue that they may not even be aware of, they're just frustrated, they just can't get things done even though they know how to do it all. How could you ask about this in a respectful and, let's say, non-pathologizing way? And how do you bring up the possibility of maybe a diagnosis or medical evaluation in a ethical and respectful way? Because we always want to make sure that there is trust there, that we have clear boundaries, clear expectations in our coaching engagement. How do you do that?
It's a good and delicate question to deal with, for sure. Many times I've had this situation come up often. People will come to me with the issues without actually attaching it to any kind of a diagnosis. So one of the things that I'll do is, first of all, I'm working with them for a little bit. I may have 2-3 sessions, and then I'll maybe just very gently broach the subject and say, have you thought of, why some of this might be happening? Why you're struggling with this, just to kind of get an awareness of, what's going on in their head. I'll be honest with you, invariably, and so far, everyone that I've brought this up with in a very gentle way. And also you want to be really, very compassionate, no judgment, just, curious. How do you think this is, maybe what this might be or what's going on? Every single one says, well, I've been thinking maybe it's ADHD. That comes up. This is a very well-known diagnosis. So it's not that, people are completely thrown off their game when they hear about it. Most of them are just really relieved. And then you want to just maybe describe some of the things that you're observing as, the coach, and say, I've been noticing that you struggle with, being distracted a lot and keeping track of things. You're losing things often. Disorganization is something you commonly bring up. These things, that falls into the category of executive functioning skills. Some of the others are, decision making, and you can bring up some of the other things. And so, that actually could potentially be ADHD. Have you considered that it might be a learning disability or something along those lines? And just come from a place of really of caring, nurturing, no judgment ever. And one of the things I also tell coaches or anyone who's working with someone with ADHD in any capacity, if you're in a relationship with someone with ADHD, never tell someone with ADHD to just do it already or just try harder.
Yeah.
I can tell you that those with ADHD are trying harder and working harder than anyone else will or can do, because they have to work harder just to be able to get to the place that the rest of the population, neurotypicals, will.
Please pardon the interruption. This is your friendly reminder that if you're enjoying today's episode, to please click like and to subscribe to the podcast. Your support is really important to us. Also, please check out the companion website, higheredcoaching.us or leadershipimagined.com/podcast. Thanks so much. And now back to the episode. So what I'm hearing you say is when you suspect something like this, you've already outlined some of the telltale signs. Be extra careful how you approach it. I mean, to tell a client that they just need to work harder is not something that we as coaches would do anyway.
Right.
So I think there's definitely some advantage to doing the coaching thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reflecting back, what you mentioned, I think is a great reminder for us as coaches, that always reflecting back. Observations, not just what clients say, but also how they act, nonverbal clues, facial expressions, body language, these kind of things is really helpful in this particular context. And you said that ADHD now is, and I quote you here, a very well-known diagnosis. It seems like a little bit of the stigma has gone over the years, even though I can imagine that there is certainly still a strong stigma, especially when you're dealing with, or when you're working with and not so much students, but faculty and professional administrators. Because from students, they just have their secondary schooling behind them. There might be some help that they have received during that time, but once they get to college, of course, they have to self-identify, they have to seek out help, be a little more proactive about it. So if we wanted to shift maybe to faculty and professional staff for a second, what is your experience working with them? Because when they can't get things done, or they feel like they're struggling in their field of expertise, that is a very touchy subject because it attacks their sense of competence potentially, and especially with faculty, being competent is such an important aspect. How do you navigate that, and how do you maybe help faculty or staff begin rebuilding that sense of competence and self-trust in case that has been undermined?
That's a good question as well. When I've worked with people in the higher education world, many times they're coming to me because they notice they're not hitting the mark. They are not doing the things that they know they need to do, and they're stressed out, they're frustrated, and they want to be able to do their job better. I haven't seen too many that question their expertise, but their ability to actually do their job and do it well. So the areas that we usually work in are helping to, for the most part, get the skills under their belt. Make sure that they have the tools to do the things that they're trying to get done so that they can be successful there. I don't have to teach them how to do their job. They know how to do their job. They just need to have the tools to be able to do the things that they intend and to make sure that they are on task, that they don't procrastinate, that they can quell overwhelm, that they can make decisions more easily, that they can strategize and sequence and prioritize. These are the kinds of skills that I teach my clients to do. Once they embody those and they know how to use them, then they can tackle their jobs beautifully. It's just making sure that they have all the tools to their, at their disposal. And many times those in academia, they've gone from an academic environment to an academic environment. They haven't had that experience of being in maybe a corporate situation or having to learn these kinds of business skills. And to be honest, many people in business haven't learned these skills either. So, this is not an uncommon scenario. And when I go in and do seminars and workshops for groups of staff in academic environments, these are the kinds of things that I teach. So entire departments can learn how to embrace these kinds of skills. So it's not always people, just with ADHD or learning disability that struggle with these areas. Many people do, because this is not something that is generally taught in school. And it should be.
Yeah. It's interesting that you use the word teach here, which again, we address this boundary between coaching and therapy. And of course, pure coaching, we should not be teaching. But I could see how working with clients with ADHD who may be lacking some of those systems or approaches of ways of structuring their day and their work, who may be lacking these skills, there is certainly a need to bring in your expertise and maybe provide them with some ideas of how to tackle some of those challenges and put systems in place for that. So a little bit of teaching, I would say, it sounds like is certainly asked for and called for in this case.
It actually has to happen. If I were to coach someone, say, well, how would you organize this system or create balance in this area? Well, they came to me because they don't know. They don't have those tools and skills. Now, since I was a consultant and I have a degree in psychology and teaching training, these are the things I've done and I can do. So I will say, okay, I'm going to take off my coaching hat right now, and I'm going to put my consulting training hat on. I'm going to teach you how to do this. And then once they have those skills into their world and they are using them, then I go back into the coaching arena, say, okay, now you've got this new scenario. You have the skills to deal with it. How are you going to do it? Tell me, show me the steps of how you're going to go and tackle that issue. And because obviously I want them to be able to do this on their own.
So you said that taking off the coaching hat and saying, I'm going to put on my, training or teaching or facilitation hat. I think the key here is really just to be transparent about what you're doing, because again, as coaches, we are partnering with our client on this. We certainly don't want to mislead them, but I think, and I've done the same thing, just seek their permission. Is it okay? Because it seems like you may benefit from maybe a different system. Is it okay if I take my coaching hat on and put my training hat on and provide you with some ideas? And then, as you said, just turn it right back to the client. It's like, okay, so when you hear this, how does that land with you? What are you going to do with this? So I think this is certainly legitimate. And as you said, it makes sense. You kind of have to do it. but there's a right way to do it, and it seems like you're certainly
Yeah.
doing it the right way. So thank you for outlining
Yeah.
that. Julie, we touched briefly on the idea of competence. And a thought that came to me while you were speaking is the same could be true for students. I worked for a long time at a large urban Research One institution with a high percentage of first generation students, minority serving institution. And one of the things that I have found is there's so many students who are first gen who don't have any family members or a whole lot of friends who can help them navigate campus. So when they arrive on campus, they are just completely overwhelmed because number one, they don't know how things work. They don't know how to interact with professors, with staff, how to get started beyond the systems that you just mentioned. And when they already struggle with ADHD, I could imagine that this just exacerbates the problems exponentially. Is that something that you have observed as well?
Yes. Most of the students, when they go into a university setting for the first time, they are overwhelmed, underprepared. They don't know what they don't know as well. So they're not only navigating getting themselves to class and doing their assignments, but also taking care of themselves, often for the very first time. They don't have anyone making sure that food just arrives. They don't have their laundry just magically done. So these are the areas that we really have to help them to navigate. And that's why when I'm coaching someone for the first time in, academic situations, I'm looking at everything in their lives, so even down to, okay, when are you going to do those chores? When are you going to do your laundry? When are you going to go grocery shopping if you're not on a meal plan on campus? So it's a lot that they have to really think about, plan, and navigate. So I can help them, of course, but there are also services on campus. And then I also encourage them, get to know your professors. Don't avoid them. Many are really hesitant and nervous to speak to their professor, email them, or just go to their office hours. So I have a lot of friends who are in academia who are professors. And I tell them, the students, straight up, your professor is obligated to have office hours. They have to sit there whether you show up or not, and they love talking about what they do. So go there, show up, and let them get to know you. Because if you end up having an issue at some point in the semester, it'll be much easier to go into that professor's office and say, hey, I'm having a little struggle with this, or I didn't really grasp yesterday's lecture. Can you help me with that? I'm not understanding this material. So this way, that introduction has occurred. So I have my students every single time, go get to know your professors in the first 2 weeks.
So it's about relationship building, building the support system, not just with on-campus support that might be there with counselors or some student success centers if they're available, but also being a little more proactive in establishing those relationships so student can find this support and reduce anxiety, perhaps when working with their professors. You mentioned doing laundry, eating, sleeping, things that all of a sudden they will have to take care of themselves, whereas maybe before when they lived at home, now they're in the dorms. Nobody is there to keep track of that. So to me, this sounds like some real lifestyle shifts that students will have to undergo. And in one of our previous conversations, you mentioned that there's some basic but non-negotiable shifts that students have to do. What are some of those shifts that you work with, especially with students on?
Most of the time, they have not had to keep track of their lives, their schedules, where they're supposed to be and when. So one of the first things I work with a student on is learn how to use their calendar properly and consistently, and set it up so that they don't have to remember. A lot of times students are feeling that they have to just keep track of everything in their head, which is so not correct. We have tools, we have systems, we have devices that can help us to stay on track and get things done and not have to remember everything. Your brain should be freed up to think, to create, to learn, to digest all this material that they're learning in school, not have to sit and ruminate on what they're going to do for dinner or when they're going to get their laundry done. This should all be scheduled. So I help them put a lot of structure in place. So again, back to
Mhm.
reducing the decision-making process. And many of the times they are struggling with, they never learned how to do some of these things at home.
You said in our last conversations, and I want to use this to kind of come full circle and slowly start wrapping things up. In that conversation, you said that in the early stages, when you work with overwhelmed clients with ADHD, whether they be students, faculty, staff, at the beginning, they may be keeping everything in their head. I'm quoting you here.
Mhm.
What did you mean by that? And how do you tackle that as a coach? And what do you focus on in those first few sessions when you're coaching with these clients?
Excellent question. So yes, most of the people that I work with when we start, they are keeping all of the things that they need to do and want to do in their head. They don't have them written down. They don't keep them in any kind of a tight task management system. They might have them on bits of paper, scraps of paper, backs of
Mm.
napkins, whatever it may be, which is not a system. And that's where things fall through the cracks, I can assure you. So I help them get things streamlined, make sure that they're using one consistent system. They know how to use it. And I help them to keep track of everything because you want to get it out of your head. Here's a little kind of cool science little tidbit here. When someone is keeping track of everything in their head and they're trying to remember something, if you have it in your mind, you say, well, I'm going to remember to do that thing. I'm just going to, keep it in my memory. So it goes in your subconscious. And then what happens as time goes on, you will start getting little reminders, and you will get this reminder of the thing that you're trying to, hold on to doing will start popping up at the worst possible time it can possibly come up. You're in the middle of cooking, you're doing something else. It's like, don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do this. Well, you can get that same cognitive interruption, which is what it is, up to 20 times per task that you are trying to remember. Do the math per
That's a
hour.
lot. That's
Okay.
that's a
So
lot and
you're
super.
trying to remember all these things. You are getting this rapid fire interruption, which is keeping you from doing the thing you need to do and stay focused on.
Mm.
Talk about distractibility.
Yeah,
Okay.
no
That's for
kidding.
anybody. For ADHD, way worse. So in order to stop this process, it's shown that if you write something down in a place you trust, you will see it again. Not on the back of a napkin, not on a scrap of paper, but in a place you trust, you will see it again. That interruption process stops.
Super helpful. Thank you for explaining that. Julie, when you and I first started talking about ADHD and coaching clients with ADHD, you said that your goal is to reduce the stigma of ADHD in the world. And that was such a powerful statement. When we translate that to higher education, what does a perhaps kinder ecosystem for ADHD look like in practice? And how can higher ed coaches play a somewhat unique role in shifting campus culture around ADHD and neurodiversity in general?
Thank you for that. This has been something in my heart for years because I wanted to make sure that when my ADHD son grew up, he grew up into a kinder world, more understanding.
Mm.
So I work at reducing the shame that many people have around having ADHD. I do feel that in the last couple of decades that I've been doing this, that it has changed. It has shifted. People are less private about that. Many will just say, "Yeah, so I've got ADHD," and and then explain, why that's necessary to talk about at that time. Now, I'm real clear with my clients. I tell them ADHD can be a reason something might be difficult or happening, whatever. It's not an excuse. You don't get to use it as an excuse. You can say, okay, so because I have ADHD, this is a bit of a difficult thing for me. Let me see what kind of accommodation I can figure out, or maybe a work scenario situation will, offer an accommodation. But when you're in any situation, a work environment, academic environment, never, ever make someone with ADHD feel that they are less than or that they are broken. Because I can tell you from experience, most of those people are brilliant. They
Yeah.
are super sharp, super creative, and have a lot to offer to the rest of the world. I actually had someone who told me he was looking for someone with ADHD to employ because he wanted someone who can think outside the box and come up with these creative solutions to their problems. I mean, that's impressive. That's new.
And powerful,
I
Juli.
just
Powerful.
loved it.
Juli, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, for your wisdom. This was a little different discussion today, but I believe it was a powerful reminder of the impact that we as coaches can have beyond just the pure coaching. There's a lot more how we can work with clients holistically, work with the whole person, and not just one specific behavioral aspects, for example, of their lives, and how we can have a real impact on their lives, on their functioning, and on their success and efficacy at work and personally. So thank you again, Juli, for making time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And I hope that you all in the audience found today's discussion just as enlightening, as inspiring. To find out more information about this episode, about Juli Shulem, our guest, her background, and additional resources, please visit our companion website at higheredcoaching.us or leadershipimagined.com/podcast. Hope to see you again soon, and until then, keep making a difference. One client and one conversation at a time. Take care.